All you prospects here looking at your phone, don't look at your phone. You're here to watch practice. You're telling me about yourself. You'd rather read your Twitter feed than watch my practice. We've got an eye in the sky. If you've never been to a practice at Georgia, which obviously the vast majority of you have not, you've never seen Kirby Smart on the microphone. And let me tell you, a lot of these practices with recruits there, they've never seen anything like it. It is quite an experience. And that was what Kirby Smart said to all of the prospects there this past week when the Dogs were hosting a lot of really good players, actually. But I think it goes to show the intensity of Georgia's practices with Kirby Smart and the Dogs. It's certainly legit, that's for sure. And I think that, when you've built what they've built at Georgia, you can say that and it's still authentic, and it's not, guys just rolling their eyes, because people want to play at Georgia. They do. Now, it's not for everybody. And a lot of the guys that play there, they'll tell you that. They'll tell you that privately. They'll tell you that on the record. I mean, it's not for everybody. And I think that, if you're Kirby and you're looking at guys and they're busy looking at their phones, do they really want to be there? Do they really want to play at Georgia? Do they really want to be exceptional, players? They might not. I mean, we live in a time, and this needs to be understood, whether or not people, will agree. I don't care. It's a fact. When we were growing up, we just didn't have what players today have, what children today have, what teenagers today have. They have only ever grown up in a world where the phone is a very big part of what they do. If you're watching YouTube, this didn't exist 20 years ago. So it wasn't there. And there's a lot of technology today that, it can captivate you. And for a 16, 15, 16, 17-year-old, player or young person, that can be captivating. That can be something that really grabs a hold of their attention. But when you're there at that moment, in that moment, you really should be paying attention to what your future could be or should be or could, what you might be going up against. That's why I think that, what Kirby's saying is what's so important about it is it's authentic. This is the way he is. If you are ever in Athens and you hear a Georgia practice, you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever been to a Georgia practice, now, not every single open period at Georgia is the same. They're not all, and every day is not the same. I mean, every day, Kirby's not going bonkers. And I don't think that's necessarily bonkers saying to guys, hey, you should be paying attention, because, by the way, that also explains we're going to hold you accountable for what you're doing while you're here, whether you're watching practice or you're at practice. And they coach guys hard at Georgia. I mean, I don't really know other way to say it. I think it's a good thing, frankly. I'm just glad Dan Schmatzer did not have a microphone, because that would have been something else where I played. It would have been something else, because he was plenty loud enough. Basketball coaches seem to be, I don't know if they were louder, but mine was. He was a very loud guy and had a lot of the same mannerisms, just very energetic, very hyper, very, he was not a tall person. He had a lot in common with Kirby Smart in terms of intensity and energy and, living the game the way that we practiced hard. It was not fun. It was not fun. And, I remember when recruits would come and it's just such a different sport almost when you're in high school playing versus college. When we go out on Friday nights, that's nothing close to the SEC. I mean, it's never been close to the SEC, but it seems like it's getting further and further away from what, we've known as the SEC, which is, as close to the NFL as it gets. These, as a 16-year-old, you probably want to play. You probably want to go out there, but you'd probably be scared half to death of what you're looking at. I mean, You've got Mikel Williams is on one side. You wouldn't be scared of Carson Beck, but you probably wouldn't want to tackle the running back necessarily. But the offensive linemen are just so huge. That's the difference the difference in the SEC and other leagues, and certainly the difference between the SEC and high school, Friday nights, Thursday nights, whatever you want to call it, is the big people. There are guys my size that are playing offensive line in high school football. 6'4", 240, 250, whatever. They don't not even coming on the field in the SEC. And that's just not happening. Like Dylan Fairchild, just as an example. Dylan Fairchild is huge. He's a big person. He's an offensive lineman right now at Georgia. Played plenty of snaps. Or Ben Jones. Let me just go back to Ben Jones. This is coming closer to 20 years ago, but probably more like 15. You go watch Ben Jones on a Friday night, and he was ragdolling people. You watch him in the high school recruiting game, at camps or combines. We had a scout.com combine at Tech one year, and he was just killing everybody, just in a line. And then he did the same thing at Georgia, later that year. And Ben Jones turned out to be a, 10-year? Maybe not 10. I don't know, maybe he was a 10-year player in the NFL. But what he was dealing with in Centerville, Alabama on a Friday night was not at all like I went to watch Ben play at Centerville High School in Alabama. I cannot remember who they were playing. I think it was Centerville. No, Bibb County. Whatever. I want to go watch Ben Jones play. The next night, Georgia and Bama played in Tuscaloosa. And, of course, Ben told me that Georgia would win. And I was like, okay. And they did. What Ben was going up against versus what I saw the next night and what Ben would go up against from that point forward, not the same. And so when you see these things close up, I think for the prospects, I wonder if it's sort of shocking to them and they don't know how to react. And the natural thing for them to do now is to be on their phone. And before we get to, kind of a lot of old man stuff, it just like, everybody's on their phone all the time. So give the kids a break on that front if you're just coming on here to criticize. But I think in Kirby's case, he's being authentic. He wants to know if the guys that they're recruiting are worth recruiting. He wants to know if the guys that they are, looking at are going to be interested enough in paying attention at a practice. And there's a lot to see, if you never go to these practices, there's a lot to see all at once. Where's the defense, where's the offense, all this stuff. And then, of course, most guys are going to want to see their position. What's it like for the guy who's going to be coaching me? What is that? What does he coach like? And obviously the head coach is just, it's hard to describe Kirby Smart at a legitimate practice. I think firecracker is probably the wrong word to describe him because a firecracker just goes off and that's it. You see the explosion. This is never ending. Like, it does not stop. And I got to say, they don't let us go to the whole practice. I'm there for the whole games. But I will say, I think he's more active at practice almost. Like, maybe not, though. I'd have to kind of think about that a little bit because you can't hear him at the games over the loudspeaker. You can at practice. And so it is very different. And I'm probably one of the few people that does both. And I think he's more active at practice than game day. That's what I suspect just off the top of my head, just thinking about it right now. But he can certainly be, I think he's much more a drill sergeant in practice and far more a guider, a mentor during the games for the most part. I don't know Kirby Smart. He's not my friend. I cover him. He's not my enemy. But, I watch him a lot and I see him in ways that other people don't because everybody that covers him, with a few exceptions, everybody's in the press box. And most people are not like me on the field as a photographer. You know, we're 5, 10 feet, 15 feet from one another, you know, 30, probably 20, 30 minutes of the game. He's not that far. You know, you could certainly throw a ball and hit him, no problem. I don't think he'd even notice half the time, but the mode is different. And that makes sense too. I know I've gotten off the subject here a little bit, but you know, when you're at practice, there are certain things you want to get done. You're saying we have a weakness at this. We've got to address this, or we have, you know, is the foot placement wrong here? Is what we're doing with our hands wrong? Games is, you know, sometimes bad stuff happens in games. It does in practice, but the ramifications from them don't go on the scoreboard that day. They go on in a few days. At a game, you know, the scoreboard happens immediately. You know, you can feel the Neyland Stadium crowd on top of you immediately. Bryant Denny, Tiger State, you know, Death Valley, whatever. You can feel that immediately. And the impressive part about Georgia is, man, I cannot remember a time where they seemed freaked out on the sideline in my time at Georgia. I think 16 Florida, Jacob Eason and the offense were having a hard time. I'm not aware. I cannot remember, like, you know, Notre Dame 17, you know, Auburn 17. Just, they don't panic. Like, there's no, we need to huddle up and talk. No, that's not who they are. They've already huddled up and talked. It's too late. I mean, it's too late by then. And they don't really do that, you know? And so they even the vast majority of times, obviously, they're winning games or they're going to win. And so they just you don't see them kind of negatively react. But I think the biggest credit, or one of the biggest credits to Kirby and that staff at Georgia, is they really know how to coach. And coaching is not screaming and yelling all the time. Yeah, that's some of it, but that's not all the time. And you can tell almost nothing freaks these guys out. Just like almost nothing. I think, you know, when Jake Fromm went in for Jacob, when Jacob got hurt, you could feel that for the Appalachian State game on the sideline. But Jake was ready, and he just went in and did it. You know, it wasn't too big for him. And you know, at the Rose Bowl, so all these things happen in practice, and I think that's part of what you could see as a recruit if you didn't have your nose in your phone. But Kirby has his nose in his phone a lot around us, so it's just it's part of society. But I think he's not just authentic, but in this case, he's correct.